It's a text question from Andrew in Fulham. Today, ahead of likely tax rises and spending cuts in November, Rachel Reeves and her team began their attempt in the British media to persuade us all that the blame for the UK's current economic woes does not rest with her policies, but is entirely down to factors beyond her control, such as Brexit. With unemployment and inflation rising, plus growth declining following her last budget, will anyone really believe her? And is this a wise strategy? Well, lots to cover there, Ollie.
Is it a wise strategy? Well, I guess they have to roll the pitch at some point. We've all known that taxes are going to go up since the fiscal headroom started to disappear. Those of us with more left-wing persuasion have probably been making the argument that taxes should increase and indeed that we should revisit the economic settlement in this country in some way for quite some time. But yeah, taxes need to go up. She's going to have to raise them. And I guess as far as sort of effective politics goes, it would be prudent to start warning people about that rather than pulling a rabbit out of the hat on budget day.
But what about blaming Brexit for it? Because forget the economics of it for a moment, but politically, will that really stick? And isn't she almost blaming Labour voters who voted Brexit or some who've gone to reform? They're not going to come back with that kind of argument, are they?
Yeah, I guess most informed economic experts say that Brexit cost us somewhere between 3 and 4% of GDP, and I think all of us probably looking at those numbers now would quite fancy an extra 3 or 4% on our gross domestic product. I think politically it works, yeah. The polling shows that people are turning around on Brexit now, that it is not as sort of favourable a position, and I think the arguments that were made at the time around sovereignty, around reducing immigration in particular, how did that turn out, versus the sort of more economically prudent ones, I think the economic argument is the one that stacks up now.
Lara?
I don't think the politics of this are going to work. If Rachel had had a very strong run from coming in till now, people would be open to playing the blame game here about other people. But the fact is, we've watched her completely fail over and over again to achieve any spending cuts. And we've watched her mess with taxes around the edges, which try and keep manifesto promises, but have caused a massive spike in unemployment. And I think she's going to really struggle to sell to anyone that that's not the problem. And she's spitting in the face of the voters that called for Brexit, wanted Brexit, are already abandoning the Labour Party as it is, and aren't going to be very fond of her after these comments. It's not going to land.
Mike Tapp, given that virtually every other Western European country is in the same position as us economically, similar problems on inflation, on debt and all the rest of it, is it really feasible to blame Brexit?
Well, Brexit has had an economic impact on growth and GDP, and you've got to look at the trade deals that we've had to strike and the resetting of relationships with the EU to attempt to recover from that. But when you look at what Rachel Reeves has done in a short period of time
I'm going to stop you, Mike, because I don't think your microphone is working. I'm not quite sure why. So we'll come back to you, I promise. Let's hope Chris's is. Otherwise, we're going to have two people for the rest of the programme.
I promise I haven't sabotaged Mike's microphone. I haven't pulled out the plug under the table. I think it's a bit desperate, really, trying to blame Brexit, a vote that happened almost 10 years ago, for the economic catastrophe unfolding in the country at the moment. I mean, Rachel Reeves, Keir Starmer have been in power now for getting on for a year and a half. She had her budget about a year ago where she put up taxes by the largest amount in a generation, despite having promised in the general election campaign not to do so. And the consequences of all of those enormous tax rises are unemployment is going up, inflation is going up, successful people are fleeing the country, businesses are going bankrupt. And the reason she's had to put taxes up, and is probably going to do so again in the budget in a few weeks' time, is because the Labour government are pathologically unable to control spending. They tried to tinker around the edges a little bit with welfare spending a few months ago, and despite having a massive majority in Parliament, couldn't even accomplish that. So if you allow welfare spending to get out of control, as they have, paying millions and millions of working age people
What was your job under Liz Truss?
And so it's not to work.
What was your job under Liz Truss? I think we know what that was.
If you let people get onto a sickness
what happened under Liz Truss? What happened to my constituents' mortgages?
If you look at people getting onto sickness benefits without even needing a face-to-face examination,
we won't take advice from the arsonists. I mean, come on.
Spending is out of control.
If you don't want Chris to interrupt you when you're speaking,
I'm going to now. Obviously,
I'm not
going to now.
If your mic works.
which is what I'm going to be doing. So if you let welfare spending get out of control, as Labour have, let people get onto welfare, sickness benefits without a face-to-face examination, no wonder our taxes are going through the roof. And we're going to be in some sort of hamster wheel of doom where taxes go up. As a consequence, growth in employment goes down. There's a shortfall. And she says, let's put taxes up even more. And this sort of doom cycle ends up perpetuating. There is another way, which the Shadow Chancellor Mel Stride set out last week, which is to get those savings, particularly in the welfare budget, but beyond that as well, which then enables some alleviation in the tax burden to get growth going. But that is not the path the Labour government are on. They're whacking up taxes, killing growth and killing jobs, and we're in this appalling doom cycle. Okay. And the budget's going to make it even worse.
Mike, do you want to start again?
Absolutely. I did a Mike Tapp, by the way, which it is working. I had to get that in there. Look, this approach from the Conservatives, I find quite simply to hold zero credibility, given what they did to the economy, and my constituents have suffered from that. What we've seen in the last 12 months from Rachel Reeves is that hard work to stabilise. The growth that we've seen, 0.7%, it's not massive, but it is the highest this year in the G7. That's important because it means we're heading in the right direction.
Is it really more than America?
3.3 million, it is at this point. Okay. 3.3 million across the country have had their wages increased by £1,400. We've enabled record investment in the NHS. Pensions are going up.
Okay, but what about the question, which was about Brexit?
And I will come to that. 5 interest rate cuts, which means mortgages and mortgage rates are coming down. That then also has an impact on rent. Now, it's only 14 months and we've had to fix a real mess. And I've just listed a number of economic successes, but we're nowhere near there. There's a long way to go. And we've said that we'll maintain the manifesto commitment. So this talk of raising taxes here, I don't know where you're getting that from, because we're being very clear that
she said today.
Not on working people. We have maintained...
No, she didn't say that.
We have maintained our manifesto commitment. Obviously, we'll see the rest at the budget. When it comes to Brexit... Look, we don't want to open up the old wound of should we have or shouldn't we have, but we can talk fact. And there are facts there around GDP growth, which we heard earlier.
It's not a fact, is it, Mike?
Well,
it's an assumption based on the OBR figures.
Exactly, from economists. It's also caused us, a hell of a lot of pain when it comes to the small boat crisis, which went from 400-ish in 2018 to over 150,000 since. So there are definitely negatives there, but what we're doing is resetting that relationship and striking new trade deals to fix the economy.
How did Brexit make the small boats crisis worse?
Look, it wasn't the only thing that made it worse, but the Dublin Agreement did act as a deterrent, and the stats speak for themselves.
That never really worked.
No, it didn't. No, it didn't. Because
you claim that 4 people going to Rwanda would have acted as a deterrent. So the Dublin Agreement certainly would have acted as a deterrent, and the stats speak for themselves.
Under the Dublin Agreement, we actually received more people than we sent back to Europe, and the numbers per year under Dublin, as you should know, were never more than a few hundred tops. I mean, this year so far, under a Labour government, we've had, 36,000 have illegally crossed. So the fact under Dublin, 400 or 500 went back, obviously would make no difference at all. So I think reaching for that is a little bit desperate.
Or 300 to Rwanda was your target.
Well, of course, it wasn't. The Rwanda scheme, as you know, never started,
guys,
of course.
If you both speak over each other, listeners will switch off because they can't tell who's saying what. So let's try and...
I'm the one talking sense and pointing to the facts that we're seeing. Chris is trying to teach us on immigration and the economy, both of which are a disaster.
He's done your job. You will say, well, he failed at it because he didn't reduce the figures. But you can't... I mean, OK, you've only been in the job a few months, so you can't be blamed for this. But the figures of people coming into the country have gone up substantially, haven't they, year on year?
We saw the similar sort of figures.
But apparently we're coming to this properly later, I'm told. So let's not have the argument
fair enough.
Now. So, Andrew, thank you very much indeed. We've got a follow-up text from Rob in Southampton who says, if you could replace Rachel Reeves, what would be your top 3 economic changes which would make Britain great again? This phrase doesn't really work, make Britain. It's basically bugger, which I don't think we want. That's a horrible phrase, isn't it? Lara, if you could replace Rachel Reeves, what 3 things would you want to do differently?
I'll try not to get too dull and technical. I think the worst tax we currently have is employer NICs, because it incentivises employers not to hire new staff because it will be very expensive for them. I would look to get that down at least to where it was before Reeves put it up, possibly further. I would then get rid of national insurance. I think it's very unfair that people who go to work and get a salary are effectively taxed more. And I would probably try and abolish national insurance and concentrate all.
Abolish it?
Yeah, you would put income tax up as a consequence, so you'd be taxing at a similar amount, but it would therefore not be this dual taxation, which is very unfair. And then you'd have one far more simple tax to deal with, putting it up or down. And then I think my final reform would be to massively reduce the regulation we put on businesses to try and get the economy going and take advantage of the fact that we can now regulate how we want, not how the EU required us to, and actually try and boost the economy that way.
Ollie?
I think we have to do something about the debt pile and the cost of servicing that debt pile, which increased massively during COVID. I don't think it's progressive to operate a deficit. If you look at Labour governments in the past, quite often they ran surpluses. So I would be looking at a penny in everyone's pound of their income tax. I'd be looking at a punishing inheritance tax.
Such a Lib Dem, aren't you?
Yeah, really, yeah. Me, a Lib Dem. So let's just pluck a figure out the air. Let's say over £10 million, 100% of that is returned to the state. And I would then revisit council tax.
100%?
Yep.
Well, that really would have a flight of millionaires.
Hang on, people simply leave. So anyone with more than 10 million would just leave the country.
Let them go.
Seriously, you want to. So let me get straight. Your idea, your genius idea, is to say that anyone who's worked hard, been successful, set up a business, and got more than 10 million quid, you're going to say go away, we don't want you.
No,
are you literally insane?
No,
you just did say that.
You
literally did say that.
No, I'm not saying they should leave the country.
Well, that's what
I'm saying. If you have the opportunity to leave £10 million to each of your children, that's quite enough. And if, as a good Tory like yourself, Chris, which I believe you are, believe in a meritocratic society, you should support it too.
I'm telling you what human nature is, and if you say to someone who's got more than £10 million, we're going to basically swipe all of it when you pass away, those people will simply leave the country. You may not like that, but that's what they'll do. I mean, they're doing it already, even at today's tax levels.
Where would they go to, do you think?
Well, they go to place anywhere else. I mean, they go to Dubai. They go to Dubai. They go to Singapore. They go to New York. They go to Milan. They would leave the country. So not only would your idea
family counts for nothing. Language counts for nothing. Schooling counts for nothing.
Mate, people are leaving already as a result of high taxes. Yeah. So not only would your genius policy raise literally no money, in fact, it would raise negative money because the most successful people would just leave the country. It's just, I mean, honestly, it's bonkers.
Can you name a country which has done this successfully?
No, but Warren Buffett's an advocate of it, and if it's good enough for him, it's good enough for me.
This is honestly bonkers.
Okay.
All right.
Just for people who
there's an idea for you, Mike.
Sorry, Iain, if I could just say, Warren Buffett, obviously one of the richest men in the world, one of the sort of soundest investors, some people who knows about capitalism. He is a ginormous advocate for an inheritance tax.
Just apply common sense.
That's all very well once you've actually accumulated the wealth, but what you want to do is stop him from earning any more.
No, he's saying that his quote is that allowing inheritance to pass on in that way is like picking the England football team based on who Harry Kane's son is. You should choose on who is.
Well, let me get this straight, because I interpreted what you said as income tax. If you're talking about inheritance tax.
Three things. The first thing was a penny in everyone's pound on income tax. Right. The second thing was a swinging inheritance tax. The third thing would be revisiting council tax based on a land value tax. Those are my 3 ideas.
Okay. Any of those appeal to you, Mike?
Lots of ideas. I'll stick with Rachel Reeves. Thank you very much.
So loyal.
What's important here is obviously growth, and we're heading in the right direction there. And it's really, well, we have achieved the highest growth in the G7 this year so far, and also that investment coming into the country. And I agree with Chris on this one that's really important to have people wanting to invest. And we've had 120 billion over the last 14 months. And Lloyds is saying that we are at an all-time high in terms of business enthusiasm. So, things are going in the right direction. That will start to create jobs once you're building more houses, infrastructure projects start to come online. And, the deals that we're striking with India, United States and the EU will assist that too. So this is about sticking to the fiscal rules and ensuring that working people are not being taxed more. That's the direction we will be going in.
Mate, you keep mentioning growth. The IMF warned Rachel Reeves yesterday that the economy is growing far slower than expected, and we could be heading for negative growth.
And that's why this is global. And we've obviously had COVID, we've had the war in Ukraine,
specific to the UK.
And globally, we are seeing very similar forecasts. But we've got to look at the evidence here, the fact rather than the speculation, which is around the growth over the last this year, which is the highest in the G7. So we are heading in the right direction there. I'm not an economist. Whether it'll work or not, I can't say. But Rachel Reeves, I have full faith in. And what we've seen so far, and I listed the benefits that my constituents are feeling, gives me faith that going forward we'll see that growth, we'll see that job creation, and we'll see a better economy. And it's about the people feeling it, that growth, and that does take time.
Now, you'll notice that I didn't interrupt you there because Jennifer complains that I interrupt Labour representatives on the panel and not the Conservative ones. So, Chris, go ahead and I'll interrupt you a few times.
Thanks, Iain. Look, I kind of admire Mike's blind loyalty there. Look, I don't think Rachel Reeves' approach is working. Let's look at the facts. Unemployment has gone up every single month since this Labour government got elected. Inflation has doubled since the Labour government got elected. And those two things haven't happened. It was 2% when we left office. It's now 4% roughly. Those things haven't happened by accident. They've happened because taxes have been pushed up in the budget last year, and that is destroying jobs, and it's causing businesses to leave, and it's causing successful people to leave the country, which is a disaster for us in the UK. So what would I do differently? First of all, I would find savings, particularly in the welfare budget. We're paying over 6 million people not to work. Letting people get signed off sick without even having a face-to-face medical examination is insane. So we've identified £47 billion worth of savings, and we would spend some of those in reducing taxes. And the two tax reductions I would go for would be, first of all, abolishing stamp duty, residential stamp duty completely for the main home purchase to enable young people to get on the housing ladder, and for upsizers and downsizers to be able to do that. And secondly, I'd use some of that money to completely abolish business rates for small shops and pubs and restaurants on the high street, as we announced at our conference last week.
It was indeed. But why do you think you could reduce welfare payments when Labour have tried to do that and have faced a lot of opposition to it, and the policies have been watered down? And indeed, Mel Stride, your Shadow Chancellor, he was DWP Secretary in the last couple of years of the Conservative government. So why didn't he do it then?
Well, he tabled plans at just ahead of the last election with savings amounting to 12 billion. The reason Labour weren't able to do anything last June when they tried to is their own backbenchers, and they're not all as loyal as Mike. They rebelled on a massive scale, and Labour, that was a sort of backhanded compliment. If your Chief Whip's listening, he'll be pleased. But not all Labour members of Parliament are as loyal as Mike, and a whole load of them rebelled, and it meant Keir Starmer, despite having a massive majority, wasn't able even to make modest reforms. But reforms are needed because we can't continue spending 140 billion a year on working age welfare. So those are my two tax cuts.